I have no idea where I came up with that guitar riff. It just came out of nowhere. I think I wrote the bass part first, and then the guitar part interwoven with that bass line. Because most of the songs that I wrote in those days, I played bass on. And, you know, in retrospect, I think Gene might have been hurt a little, because a lot of times I wouldn't even ask him. I go, I'm playing bass on this song. I wrote it. I wrote the bass part. I want to do it. You know, I never really even gave him a chance. You know, at that point, I guess I was becoming a little pushy about, you know, the way I wanted my songs to sound.
It was 1980. Time for another album. Once we started working on Unmasked, it became clear that Peter's chemical problems had become major and that he needed some serious help. But he couldn't get that help within the context of the band. There was too much temptation, too many distractions, and he was causing all of us too much stress. We had a discussion with Vinnie Poncia, and he said, look, I don't want to use Peter on Unmasked. I want to use Anton Fig.
Immediately after the end of the tour in mid-December 1979, Peter married his second wife, Deborah Jensen, a Playboy playmate. The situation was weird. I couldn't help but wonder, would she marry him if she realized she was marrying the former drummer of Kiss?
See, Larry was like a therapist. He took up therapy. It was really therapeutic for me, where I would say, I don't think I should say that. That's like a little nasty. That seems that seems a little uncool. And he would say, Peter, this is a one-time thing. This is your life. This is your life. Nobody else's life. You're an original. You put this band together with the other three. You have every right to say what you want to say. Enough's been said about you. And he had thousands of remarks said about me from Gene, Paul, or Ace through the years of the put-downs. But I think that's a little crude. He said, just say it, Peter. Just get it off your chest and say it like you're telling me about it, how upsetting it was for you in that moment, in that dressing room, or that car, or that hotel. You need to say it, man. You need to tell your fans the truth. You need it for yourself to tell the truth, and trust me on this, please. I went to a lot of emotional breakdown on a lot of things. I just thought maybe I shouldn't say. I should say it, or this needs to be said, and it wasn't said. Being treated like a second-hand citizen was heart-rendering for me. You know, if you do it wrong, we'll fire you. If you don't do this right, there's the door. They had the power. I'm going to pull a plug, and that's the end of this. I paid my dues.
The decision to use a different drummer on the album was just the first step in dealing with Peter. We honestly weren't sure what to do with him. He had been with the band since we started, and Kiss was an extremely loyal organization. Toward the end of the recording sessions, Poncia asked him to come in and add some harmonies on selected songs. They didn't go very well either.
Early in 1980, Bill had to break the news to Peter that he was out.
No.
But instead, Bill persuaded the other three of us that we should give Peter a second chance.
Look, he said, you guys have a tour to do. I don't want to get another drummer.
So we didn't finalize a decision, and after a few months, a period when we were off the road anyway, recording Unmasked with Anton Fig on drums again and Vinnie producing, we agreed to have Peter come back and try playing with us.
Anton, who later became the drummer for David Letterman's Late Night Band, was a friend of Ace's, and he had appeared on Ace's solo album. Using Anton instead of Peter played into Ace's hands, because it made him feel more in control. This was a kind of balancing act that Paul and I were used to. One year making Peter feel better about himself, the next year doing the same thing for Ace.
Anton Fig was a member of Kiss for one day, and this is how it transpired. We were looking to audition drummers, you know. When we did that, we auditioned about a dozen drummers, and Eric Carr was one of them, and we all know the history behind Eric Carr.
Sure.
But prior to that happening, I called up Paul and Gene, and I said, because I had been working with Anton Fig on my solo record, and I said, why don't we get Anton Fig to play drums? And they both agreed. So I called up Anton, I said, you're in the band. He was thrilled. He couldn't sleep all night. And then the next day I got a call from Paul and Gene, and they said, you know, maybe Anton Fig isn't such a good idea, because me and him, we used to party together all the time, and they figured, you know, There might be a little dissension in the group because of that. So I had to do the dirty work, call back Anton and tell him, sorry, Anton, you're not in the band. So for 24 hours, Anton was in KISS. He was elated, and then he was let down.
In the interim, Bill had arranged for Peter to take drum lessons from Jim Chapin, a famous jazz drummer.
So we set up a meeting at SIR Rehearsal Studios in New York. And at the appointed time, Peter appeared,
carrying a music stand and sheet music. The first thing he said was, I'll have to have all your songs on sheet music because I read music now.
the kind that symphony orchestra players have, with a clip for the sheet music. He looked very serious and intense. Peter couldn't read or write music, not then and not now. None of us could. We were a self-taught rock band. But by that time he was so delusional that he thought if he had a music stand, he could convince us that he had changed. I'm surprised he didn't bring a baton.
I whispered to Gene, "Are we on candid camera?"
"You guys," he said, "I've completely changed my life around. I've been studying drums and music for the past 6 months, and I can read music. I'm completely better."
Peter sat down, put his sheet music on the stand, and studied it for a while.
I looked at the music sheets incredulously, and then at him. "Can you read and write music, Peter?" "Sure," he said, then mumbled something, but I couldn't make head or tail of it.
Mind you, this was a rehearsal of old material, not the new stuff we had written and recorded for Unmasked. We wanted to see whether he could even play the songs he already knew.
Then we started playing, and he was worse than ever.
The rehearsal did not go well. It was over.
So we had a meeting afterwards, and we said, "Peter is unhealthy. He's going to kill himself. He's got to leave the band and get some help."
My philosophy had always been that if somebody was drowning, you tried to save the person. But when they started to pull you under, you cut them loose. That's what was happening.
So after much deliberation, everybody, including Ace, voted him out of the band.
All the talking and advice and trying to get him help got us nowhere.
10 years, I mean, if the Beatles could break up, you know, I could leave something, and I love the Beatles. And leaving the band, I thought about it for at least 3 years. It wasn't an overnight decision for me. And it was long coming since when I wrote Beth, and I felt so proud of having a #1 record. It kind of gave me a lot of initiative to say, well, man, I like to do more of that. And I was kind of being held back in a sense as an artist of not having my fair share of abuse, I call it. And I just didn't get enough tunes, and it was getting really frustrating for me. And towards like the last tour, we did something like 90 shows, and I said that, you know, I went on after I got married, went on my honeymoon, I was in Brazil, and I said, that's it, you know, I try, and it's not fair for them or myself to go up there, and it's not fair to the audience, and I'm not giving, I called it 110, and I told the guys when I got back, and they were shocked, and they felt bad, and they said, is that what you really want to do, Peter? And I says, look it, man, I played for 60,000 as people, and I'm, as far as financially, I'm very comfortable, and it's not the money, guys, it's the music. I'm really hurting as an artist. I gotta break out, and I gotta try my own thing. And was I really that good to get a People's Choice Award or be up for 2 Grammys? So,
to the press, we used the traditional rock and roll excuses: creative differences, desire to begin a solo career, and so on. We never said that Peter was thrown out of the band because he was a drug addict. We wouldn't have done that to him, to the fans, or to ourselves.
Anybody could wear the makeup. It's the heart behind the makeup. You know, you put a little of Space Ace, you throw a little of the Catman, you put a little of Jew Guy, and you're going to get the craziest band you ever had in your life. You're going to take some of that away and put some other guy's chemistry in. You're not going to get the same chemistry. We were really at a point where we stood for the guy in the back of the classroom who got made fun of, the kid who, you know, no one wanted to talk to. Those are the fans that we really loved. That seemed to have veered off somewhere into some place. It's not there no more for me, and I see it ain't there anymore for you guys, and I think that's what we stood for. We stood for the underdog, and I stand for the underdog.
We shot a video for the song Shandy after the decision to let Peter go had been confirmed. He came to the video shoot knowing it was the last time he would appear with KISS. At the end of the day, he took his makeup case with him and left. It wasn't tearful, but it was a big moment. Peter was leaving. We had fired him, and this was the last time we were going to see him in the band. Oddly enough, Peter didn't seem to care. He was likely in his own drug haze and saw this as his big opportunity. In his mind, he wrote the biggest song we ever had, and now he was free to go out and become the big star he should be. Wow, Peter's gone. It's the end of something. But the end of what?
It's what I always wanted to do. That's all I ever wanted to do, was to be in the band that I wanted to be in, and that was Kiss. When I left them, obviously, you see, I never joined another band. There was no other band for me. There is no other band for me. There never will be another band for me but Kiss, because I started Kiss.
It was difficult to envision the band not being the four of us. Dysfunctional or not, we were the Four Musketeers. It was a scenario we had never contemplated. What if somebody no longer wanted to be there? What if somebody was no longer doing his job? Whatever tension there was inside the band, we had always remained a band. Then all of a sudden, one person was no longer part of the band. It shook all of us to the core. What do we do? Do we break up the band? The rules had changed. Kiss clearly wasn't going to continue as it had. As the drama with Peter was unfolding during the first half of 1980, we were also involved in a drama with our record label. Casablanca was absorbed by Polygram, and for some reason, the lawyers of the new company hadn't checked Casablanca's contracts with a fine-tooth comb. Polygram assumed they were buying Kiss and Donna Summer along with the label, but we had a key man clause, meaning that in our case, the deal was predicated on the presence of Neil Bogart. And from what we heard, the same was true of Donna. Now, we may have been in some decline after Dynasty if you gauge things by the tour, when we'd had to cancel some shows and witness the changing demographics of the audience. But the way Polygram saw it, Dynasty had been a huge hit, and in addition to making the charts at home, I Was Made for Lovin' You had been our most successful single outside the United States by far, hitting the top 10 all across Europe and topping the charts in Australia and New Zealand. The label risked looking like idiots if they let us walk away, which we were entitled to do once they canned Neil. The situation could not have worked out better for us.
No.
Polygram ended up giving us a new and very lucrative deal as a face-saving move. Negotiating a new contract under these disastrous circumstances for them proved extremely advantageous for us.
My relationship with Cher had changed. We were still seeing each other, but we had moved on. Even though its shape had shifted, the relationship had changed me permanently. When Cher and I decided to change things, there was no pain or anguish because neither of us had tortured the other. When it began to end, I remind myself how wonderful she was and how lucky I had been to have known her, and prepared to go back to my whoring ways. The last thing I expected was to meet another woman and start another serious relationship. It was Christmas time, and I had to return to New York from California to audition new drummers to replace Peter. I was talking to Cher, because we were still close, and she asked me to get her a Christmas present. I don't know what to buy you for Christmas, I said.
Go and talk to my friend Diana. She'll show you what I like. We shop at the same places.
This was Diana Ross, who had begun her career with the Supremes. When I came into New York, I tracked down Diana on the phone, and she invited me over to her place. I remember coming in and immediately thinking two things about her. First, that she was very sensual, and second, that she was in firm control of her career. I sat there and we talked. She wanted to know how Kiss worked, since our success didn't rely on hit singles. I tried to explain our philosophy of playing concerts and creating a fan base that was founded on loyalty, not on hit singles. Over the next few weeks, Diana and I became friends. We talked, and I took her to dinner a few times. And I'm not sure that either of us had any hidden agenda, but pretty quickly it became apparent something was happening between us. Life should be about choices, and only I was going to choose what was right for me. The only problem was that by the time I met and fell for Diana Ross, I had started to like the idea of having children. I didn't admit it to myself, not then, but I remember walking into Diana's home in Connecticut and feeling the love she and her 3 girls shared. I liked being there. It felt safe. I was surrounded by children. I was living with a woman I loved being with night and day. But they weren't my children, and we weren't married. Being with Diana was liberating. She didn't need me to fulfill her life. She was a mother and a superstar. We were together because we wanted to be. I brought Diana and the kids over to my mother's house for Passover dinner. We spent one summer together at Martha's Vineyard. It was the first time I didn't think about work. Not all the time, anyway. The guys in the band thought I was completely insane by now. I was. I was the guy in the band who was constantly on the hunt for skirt. But here I was settling into domestic life for the second time.